Hello and good evening. Welcome to this episode of Trialogue. My name's Ruth White and I'm going to be your host again. Apologies for that for this evening. I have three panellists with us this evening and I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves. Dylan.
Hello, my name is Dylan Rhys. As you can tell from my name and my accent, I am from Wales. I've been an ordained minister for the past 7 years with a pastorate in Llandudno in North Wales, but only just recently moved to Bridgend, where I am now a minister. And for the past 3 years, I have also been with the Union Welsh Independents and as a chair for the Mission and Worldwide Church Department with them.
Thank you. Ella.
I'm Ella. I am East Midlands Synod Youth Rep, and I'm I think I'm on here to talk about my time in Germany.
Yes, you are. Thank you. Ali.
Hi, I'm Ali. I'm from Manchester. I am a nurse at a big children's hospital in Newcastle, and I guess I'm on here to talk about a few different the URC have wanted me to go on, or I've been on with the URC.
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for being here, all three of you, and a big warm welcome to you. We really do appreciate you giving your time. And welcome to everybody joining us this evening or later. Whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or listening to the podcast, you are very welcome here. This is your space. This is your programme. So do get involved. Send in your comments, your questions, your experiences. We'd love to hear where you've been and your experiences and how it affected you. Do that on Slido, and the information is along the bottom of the screen now for you. So participate. This is your programme. Shall we start with a short prayer? God, we are your people. We're your family. We are your church. Wherever we find ourselves, whichever country we may be living in, help us tonight to celebrate your church around the world. Inspire us, Lord. Encourage us and challenge us again to be one church in you. Amen. So do get involved. Slido, down the bottom there. Get involved. Send in your comments, your experiences, your stories, your questions for Ali, Ella or Dylan, and we'll make sure that they get addressed. So this month, URC Youth have been exploring World Church as part of their Reassembled programme. It feels like we've been doing Reassembled programme forever, but it's really not been going that long. It feels like it's part of our DNA. So I hope you're getting involved with that on the URC Youth website and Facebook page. So tonight, with our three panellists, we're going to be hearing their different experiences from visits to places around the world and churches in other areas. And we look forward to hearing their thoughts, their experiences, and how it's infected, that's not the right word, so I apologise, how it's impacted on them and their faith. So don't forget, get involved, send in your comments and your questions. So I gave the panellists 3 questions to get us going. And so we'll start with those. The first question is, what is your experiences with churches around the world? So tell us a little bit about where you've been and perhaps why you went and how it impacted on you. Who would like to go first? Why don't we ask Ella to tell us about Germany?
Okay, so 2018, I think I just finished my A-levels and I wanted to go to Germany. I didn't want to go to uni or start an apprenticeship just yet. And so I became a European volunteer, which was all EU funded, and it was volunteering in an EU country. So I went to Germany and I volunteered with YMCA. or in German it's Fgm, and I volunteered with a youth group over there. And I did bits of teaching English, and I did bits of working with the youth group and working with the school that the youth group was based in. And it was definitely eye-opening, because I'd say the church that I worked with, or the youth group that I worked with, were a lot more evangelist than I was used to, maybe slightly more traditional than I'd been used to from my small church in the middle of Derbyshire. And it was, yeah, I found it difficult at points when we were having discussions about maybe some more controversial topics in the Bible and how to teach that to young people growing up and discovering the Bible. And especially because the situation we were in, we were introducing people to God, to the Bible, to the world of Christianity. And sometimes it felt like there was only one way to tell people about God, which I disagree with personally. I think there are many different ways to find God. So that was a struggle sometimes, but it was really, I think it definitely improved my faith and my sense of how to be a Christian in the worldwide church, because there are different traditions as well. I mean, we read the same book, but I mean, silly things like that would make you laugh, like Shrove Tuesday in the UK, we always had pancakes, but whereas in Germany, they had donuts. So just simple things about how things are celebrated and how seriously some religious days are taken than others, and things like that.
So how did you hear about that opportunity?
My mum's a German teacher, and that helped quite a lot because she knew quite a lot of opportunities that I could go on, and I kind of spent quite a lot of time scrolling through websites looking for placements, trying to find somewhere where I could go. And definitely I'd say if you're wanting to go somewhere, especially to learn a language, young people is definitely a good way forward. So they'd always say things about 3 times and never change the way that they'd say a sentence. So I just have to try and translate and try and understand, and it definitely improved my communication skills. I guess if you're traveling abroad to do something with church, then look out for going with a Christian organization. But I always found that even if I didn't go to the same church that maybe the people I knew in Germany went to, then I would always be welcomed, because I mean, I was English and I was abroad, and people just welcome you in. And especially in German churches, I always find instead of tea and biscuits, they had coffee and cake, and coffee and homemade cake. So at the end, somebody would always come up to you with coffee and a very big slice of cake and talk to you in a mix of German and English, definitely.
I feel like this whole cake and donut thing is definitely something we need to adopt.
Yeah.
Because part of sort of exchange programs or foreign experiences, world church experiences, part of it must be being challenged in your own theology and experience, and then bringing it back and challenging others, and perhaps even adopting other ways of doing things. That's brilliant. Thank you, Ella. We'll chat more. Dylan.
Well, I've been fortunate to have experienced being part of 2 youth programs a couple of years ago with the Council for World Mission in 3 different countries. And I've also been arranging several youth programs within the UK with the Council for World Mission. To some of you that maybe doesn't know who Council for World Mission is, it is a worldwide partnership of churches. There are 32 member churches, and of course the URC are one of those member churches. And there's an emphasis on St. Brown's mission, which is called In Christ to Radical and Prophetic Discipleship, working in partnership with churches and the ecumenical communities. to resist life-denying systems, affirm peace, do justice, and enable life-flourishing communities. That's a long sentence, but yeah, I had an opportunity at first to go to Hungary back in 2009. Now that shows my age a little bit, where I attended a program to explore what is mission in a local setting. And we worked with a local church in Fgm in Hungary, exploring what is mission, and also involved in a church. Well, we're building a community garden for the church, and also running a children's club there too. Now, when you're in local Hungary, in a rural setting in Hungary, then language is unfortunately a barrier, and that is where I do believe that there are so many ways, as you said, Ella, before, that there are so many ways of doing mission, and to share God's message also, even without using words, and that is what I've learned when I was in Hungary. But having a taste of that, I wanted to do something more. I wanted to do more mission work. I wanted to go abroad. I had the traveling bug, as they say. And of course, there was an opportunity that came to go on training in mission with the Council for World Mission. So I did that in 2011, where me and 11 other participants from different countries went to South Africa for 5 months, and then to India for 5 months. And it was an experience that when I preach, I always talk about that time. I think some of my members are tired of hearing of my experiences going abroad and being part of CWM's mission. But working with preschools, worked in a chaplaincy department in India, leading services in different churches, doing house-to-house visits with a local church in the rural India. It's something that you wouldn't get in Wales, but it's an amazing experience to engage with local church in a local setting, doing mission, and then bringing it back.
Fascinating. Wow, I'm jealous of your experiences. Thank you, Dylan. It's worth saying before I come to Ali that many of our synods partner with other countries. So my synod, Wessex, we're partnered with Zambia. So it's worth finding out, those of you watching, is your synod partnered? And who are they partnered with? If they're partnered, they will arrange trips regularly as part of that partnership. So your church might be able to host the people from that partner country when they visit, and likewise you might be able to get yourself on one of those trips. And there is funding available for young people who want to take part in those partnership visits. And you can find out all about those opportunities and the funding on the URC website. Just put in URC events and opportunities and the list comes up. So don't miss out, okay? Find out who your synod is partnered with. Ali, tell us about your experiences.
Well, you've introduced it there for me, Ruth. That's how I kind of got involved in going on trips abroad with the URC. My home synod is partnered with Taiwan. So when I was a little bit younger, someone in my church is on that committee for the synod and said, oh, there's this trip. It's the first youth trip to Taiwan, because previously it had all been kind of ministers or trainee ministers. So we were encouraged to go on. So I went to Taiwan and we were kind of split off into little groups and sent to a church as a two, with also a leader as well. And kind of were involved in the activities going on in that church. So mine was a little quite a large church with a very young community, and nearly all of the activities were led from the youth. So we just got involved in that summer school that was being run there for a week, and that's kind of where I started getting involved in, I guess, churchy travel rather than just travel by myself. And then a few years later, I took my mum away. We do, at my home church, do a Developing World project every year and raise funds for one that's selected by a committee within the church, which my mum was leading at the time. And so was really engaged by one of the projects. So I said, let's go. So we did. And that was a safe house for young women who were either had undergone FGM or kind of were at risk of that. And it was an education centre, somewhere for them to live, and kind of give them some skills that they could go on from there with a life, with something more than just being protected. And it was the church over there that funded that project, like the Anglican church of the area. So we were very much thrown into life of the church there, and the whole mission of that church was this safe house, I guess. It came along with a lot of politics of corruption and kind of neglect from different parts of the team who funded it, I guess, there, just unfortunately. So that was also a challenging part to be in there. And yeah, I guess that's where I've had involvement. And I was meant to be going away with the Council for World mission, but thanks to COVID, that's not occurring. So but COVID doesn't stop things. So yeah, I've still been very involved in that project to South Africa. I was meant to be going to personally, but just in a more online way, which is new and exciting, and I've still got to meet lots of people, but just in a very different way. So yeah.
Gosh. We just had a question pop in, Ali. Could you just remind us what FGM is for those of us who might not be aware?
Yeah, so it stands for female genital mutilation. It's not a particularly nice thing, and it's a cultural thing. It's often associated with religion, but it's a cultural thing that's done where often young women around the age that they're due to start their period, or even from as young as kind of 3 or 4, are essentially it's a ritual that happens, which means a part of them is cut off or changed in their kind of genitalia area, and it means they're then sacred or like ready to accept a man into marriage. It's not something necessarily anyone has a choice in, although it is illegal across the world. It still happens, and I think it is starting to be much more have much more of a prevalence in the UK as well, just with the immigration and the kind of cultures that we have now, which is very exciting, but also brings this challenge that we have to deal with here. So the safe house, in a sense, is a place where those girls can flee from that happening to them, challenge it with their parents, or kind of have that recuperation and often medical support afterwards. Yeah.
Thanks, Ali. I'm going to ask if you want to come back at each other at all on those experiences that you've shared, and while you have some thinking time, I'm just going to remind the viewers and listeners, get involved, guys. We would love to hear if you've had experiences. We'd love to hear them and share them as well. And any questions you've got for the panel, just throw them in. If we don't know the answers, we'll find out for you. So don't worry about how big your question is. You send it in. It's worth saying that the URC are absolutely committed to World Church and partnerships. Absolutely, it's part of their ethos and theology, really, and their values. So there will be opportunities, there will be partnerships, and there will be links, as Ali was saying about her church and her synod links. So find out, ask questions, go and see your children and youth development officer, or your minister, or your synod moderator, or just ask. Get involved, and I loved the idea of doing it as a year out. I think that's genius. I think all URC youth should be encouraged to do that. I must say as well, because I feel like I'm going to get told off, that I just said Wessex is with Zambia, because we're also with France. I should say that. And I know that a lot of our young people experienced a 3-year youth exchange, which was with all 3 countries. So one year they all went to Zambia, one year they all went to France, and the 3rd year they all came to us. So that was an amazing experience, a big commitment, but over 3 years. I've got a question coming for you. Would you like to comment or ask each other anything before I bring that question in?
I've got a question for Ella. One of my best friends is German as well, so I kind of get some of the things you say and relate a little bit with the German churches. But how did you find the kind of speaking in a different language often? Did that change the meaning of a lot of things to church? Did things, not the direct translation, mean different things, but did different things mean, did communion mean the same thing? Did it through the language? Because often things are lost or changed.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was in Germany for 7 months in the end because it was pre-COVID. I ended up coming back 2 days before, no, the day before we went into lockdown in the UK. I flew back home. And I think in those 7 months, and I mean, I went to church nearly every Sunday, but in those 7 months, I did communion twice. And it was completely different to anything I'd experienced, because in my church, we do it once a month. And somebody comes round, you all have your bread together, you all have your wine together. And instead, both ways, this was in 2 different churches, and they rarely do it, or they rarely had communion in both these churches. And you'd walk to the front, you'd stand in a circle, you'd get given I think they had crackers rather than bread, but you'd get given it, you'd put it in your mouth and you'd hold hands, and somebody who didn't have bread in their hands would pray. And then once they'd finished praying, you could eat. It was a very bizarre process, but it wasn't done as much as maybe we have it or I'm used to partaking in communion. And they were also, I think, a lot more strict on who could deliver communion. I can't be 100% on that because I didn't fully understand the German. I had one conversation about that. But yeah, they, because I'd suggested bringing it to our youth group and maybe getting somebody to come in and do it. And the youth leader said, oh, well, we could, but it'd be very, very complicated because we had to have these type of people in, and it was a bit confusing, so we didn't do it in the end. But yeah, the meaning was a lot different. And there are other things. So in Germany, you stand up to pray, but you sit down to sing, which I wasn't quite used to. Like when a hymn would start, I'd start standing up and realise, oh wait, nobody else is standing up. I should sit back down again. And then I'd stay seated when I was praying, and everybody else would stand up. There was a lot of holding hands and touching shoulders, but when praying as well. And the services, rather than having hymns and worship music dispersed throughout, as maybe we're used to, they'd have one big chunk at the beginning. They'd have the full service with prayers and the children's talk and everything, which could last quite a long time. And when you're having to translate and understand everything, it was quite tiring. And then they'd have one hymn at the end. So you'd start with 20 minutes of music and then go on to the rest of the service.
Ali, you said earlier as well about language, and language can be sometimes the different meanings, because I have a friend that lives in Malaysia, and of course when we were in training mission together, she used to call God Allah, because in Malay, the word for God is Allah. But of course, our view in this world, we tend to associate the word Allah with of course Islam. But it's just as you said as well, Ella, I think it's just understanding each other and being part of worldwide church is understanding and being on the just being respectful as well, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of you get opportunity for it to work the other way in your visit? Did you have opportunity to explain and show perhaps how church happens for you in this country, or was it very much about soaking up?
Mine was an exchange project, so
Ah.
most of the people who I met then came back to like Northwestern Synod, and actually a couple of them stayed with me and my family and kind of had their like project as such within my church. So it was a very much like a both way thing, and actually one of the people who I got closest to and spent most time with whilst in Taiwan ended up coming to my church in my home. So we saw both sides of every side of each other's lives. So I guess, yeah, but we were invited in a lot of places. And I think everywhere I've been and been to another church, the fact that someone else is there is very special. So I've always been invited to share even a prayer or a song or anything, just something, a snippet of your faith. And I think when that was at my home church in Manchester, everyone was like, oh, this is wonderful. But when I was away, it was phenomenal. Like, it was amazing. It was on another level when I was out there, or it felt like that. I think because we're British, sometimes we're a little bit more reserved. Maybe that's the difference. But certainly they wanted to know everything about your life, your church, everything that you felt. I think everywhere I've been, actually, I've given a testimony, because they're so eager to know what it is for you and to understand that.
I think there's a lot we can learn from this, isn't there? Not even across borders, just in the same city, churches working together could do more of this mutual learning and listening and celebrating and valuing each other. Just to say, I looked up some of the opportunities already gone. So this isn't an advert, this is a celebration that young people have been involved with. So there's opportunities to be a steward at the World Council of Churches Assembly in Germany. There you go, Ella, you could have done that in the mother tongue. Or you could have gone to Berlin, there you go. There's a definite theme here. A group of young people went with a team to Berlin to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the
I was there.
Were you there, Ella?
But I wasn't with URC. I did that just because I was in Germany at the time.
Oh, well, what an experience. Feel free to talk about it. And the youth festival in Hungary, of course, and lots of youth exchanges, as Ali's been saying. And let's not forget that regular trips take place to Israel and Palestine. And sometimes they're youth specific trips as well. There's lots of opportunities. I'm really hoping people are hearing this. Lots of opportunities. Please, please, please don't feel that this isn't for you for whatever reason. You know, never let cost or anything like that stop you. There's been an interesting question though come in. I'd not preempted this question. This is brilliant, this question. So how do we balance providing overseas opportunities whilst recognising the impacts that travel has on the environment and climate change? So here I am saying, come on guys, let's all go, let's all keep going. But hang on a minute, what about the impact if we're also an eco-friendly church, which the URC are also working very hard and being activists around climate change? How do we balance those two things? Would any of you have comment on that?
I actually wrote that down as a point to the last question, because everyone probably knows that I'm a bit of an eco-bash. So I actually wrote that do everything you can, but do it as eco-friendly as possible. That was one of my...
How do we do that? Do you have any...
Yeah, I think in terms of countries you can get to by transport that isn't a plane, definitely an option. I know the 30th anniversary of the Berlin Wall, that was done by train rather than by plane, as far as I'm aware. So there's already one thing that's significantly reducing their footprint. And I think actually doing trips that are not essential, but that have maybe more value, or kind of combining the trips so that instead we'll have a ministerial, a youth, and like lay preachers going on separate trips, and we do that together. And instead of many people going, we have, although it's, you know, we want as many people to go as possible, having a reduced number there, and then there being a responsibility on those people that go to really share that experience rather than just experience it for themselves. There needs to be kind of an ownership of that. And actually transport itself can be, as much as if we didn't do it, it would save CO2 emissions and everything, but offsetting things is quite easy. And I know I personally offset all of my flights that I go on, and it's an extra 20 quid here and there just to offset your flights, and you can hold companies to account and check that they're doing that. And there's many companies through the actual airlines that you fly with, or I just do it like through another company that I use, and just give them my miles on my plane, and then they offset it by the amount of CO2 that averagely would release, and then plant the trees to combat that. So there's ways of doing it, and I think it's about kind of making sure things are properly planned, that if we can share rooms, we share rooms. If we can reuse towels, we do that. It's about the little things, even though I know a lot of people don't believe the little things matter. Actually, if everyone on that trip did those little things, you would have half the footprint of everyone having their own room, everyone having their own towel, using all the little bits, and you get in the hotel rooms, and just kind of accepting that, you know, you're not going to have everything 5-star and lovely. It'd be lovely, but actually crashing somewhere that's a little bit easier or less cost to maintain or releases less CO2. So staying in a church hall with a camp bed, you know, I think that there's lots of ways around doing it. And in an ideal world, we'd cut all trips because that would be the best for the environment. But then the impact that it's clearly had on just the three of us, that would then be counterproductive to a lot of things as well. So there has to be a balance, doesn't there? We're never going to be completely carbon neutral, but also get these experiences. But there needs to be a balance and kind of a personal onus of trying to do it yourself, not necessarily being left to the trip, because actually it is everyone's responsibility, not the person who's organising the trip or the URCs. It's personal as well. So
yeah, I do love the idea of young people asking those questions when opportunities are given to them. They say, well, I'd love to, but first, can I ask you about these? That would be great. Our youth do that well. Ella and Dylan, did you have anything else you wanted to comment on that one?
Yeah, because you know, because my involvement is mostly with Council for Admission, and as about the Council for Admission is, you know, it everywhere, every part. You know, a lot of churches come from the Pacific as well, especially countries which are more impacted by climate change. And I have several friends that, you know, are daily being challenged by rising sea levels. Now, you know, without meeting them, I wouldn't know of their situation. CWM has opened my eyes to the climate emergency and that personal connection with people around the world, people from Malawi, from Bangladesh, you know, people that are seeing, Bangladesh is underwater all the time, and the Pacific too. But I know that one of the things that has opened CWM's eyes and myself as well is over the past year that we have been doing meetings and having conference calls and webinars and all kinds of things over Zoom. There's lots of things that we can do over Zoom and digitally, but it's, as you said, Ali, it's just having that balance as well, where you do need sometimes to meet people and have that personal experience in that particular country as well.
Yeah, there's something to be said about seeing what's behind the Zoom camera, because we only get to see what we're seeing, don't we? Ella, I don't want to move on if you had something you wanted to say.
No, I think all the points have been covered. I know I felt really guilty when I was flying to and from Germany, I was like, I've done it again. But I know one time I caught the train back and it made me feel a lot better.
Mhm.
That was a really long journey. So
Yeah.
but yeah, carbon offsetting.
And that thing that Ali said about know why you're going.
Yeah.
And I guess Dylan's point about so know why you're going and be asking, is there another way we could have done this? And acknowledging when we need to that actually no, we have to go and we have to see and you have to experience it to be able to come back and share that story for everybody else who may not be able to go. So our time is flying by. Don't forget, if you've got any more comments or questions, there's still time, send them in. We will address them. I'd love to hear where you've been as well. We really would love to hear that. So why is it, I feel like you've touched on this a bit, but why is it important, do you think, for us to undertake trips and experiences, thinking particularly about how it may have benefited you? If with all the spending cuts, the URC suggested that they're not, by the way, but if they were going to suggest that a ban on all these foreign exchanges and trips because of cost, what argument perhaps would we give for it to continue? Who would like to? Just jump in, guys. Go on,
I think there's a lot to be said, isn't there, from just experiencing something else, just seeing how someone else does it, because it's human nature to do things the way that we've always done them and to kind of get stuck in our ritualistic rut, which, you know, sometimes really works for people. But I think youth, anyone, but particularly youth, often want something else, want something that challenges them in a different way. Kind of talking about, like what Ella was talking about before, like you can share your word in many different ways. So just that fundamental learning about how other people do it in a different way and being inspired a little bit by that, I think is probably the most important thing, isn't it? Just to give us that refresh, inspiration, see how other people do it, and take that back with us, and you have a bit of steam and feel inspired and kind of go from that for a little while. And that brings a lot to your own church, to other people who you can share those personal experiences. And I know for me, it never stops. There's always something, remember that time I was here, or remember that time, and do you remember that person said this? Like there's always an anecdote or something, which even if it doesn't come into a church life, you tell your friends, you tell people, and I think then that inspiration just keeps going. I know things will never leave me, because there were certain things you'll always remember and always think, I'm never going to do it like that, I'm always going to try and do this, or remember the passion that they showed. I think that's probably the fundamental reason why we couldn't just let the URC ban all of our trips. I think so. I think, yeah.
Dylan or Ella? They're going to ban it. Why shouldn't they?
I know. I mean, definitely speaking from a Christian point of view, like the deepening of faith, the experiences, the understanding how the Bible has been interpreted in different ways. I mean, I was in former East Germany, and during the occupation of East Germany, having a faith was so important, because it was one of the things that the state couldn't take away. So understanding that, and hopefully never having to live it, but understanding why faith was so important to them, and especially because might make people feel old here, but in my mind, the fall of the Berlin Wall was ages ago, because it was a long time before I was born, or at least 11 years before I was born. So, sorry, and like, but people I would talk to, they'd experienced growing up in former East Germany, and their faith being something that kept them free. And learning about that and understanding about that, and especially taking what I knew from doing German A-level and learning about former East Germany, and taking that from a textbook to somewhere real, was so important, because I sat in classrooms for, I don't want to think about how long, learning French and learning German and learning the history of these countries and learning the culture. But until you travel, it's just a story. Like, I would never really think that it were real. I know the statistics, like 1 in 3 people were spies in former East Germany, and it was crazy. And then I sat down and had a conversation about it, and my host family, they were saying, oh yeah, well, the mother of the host family said, yeah, my youth leader when I was a child, it turned out when the Berlin Wall fell that he was a spy. And it was crazy to like put the stuff I'd learned in a book into practice and really understand. So definitely, I mean, the culture side of things, the learning the languages, you don't have to learn a language. I'm not going to force you to learn a language to go on a trip, but understanding other people's culture, I think, definitely makes you more, I don't know how to word it, but as a human, I think, like, you understanding different cultures, you're more maybe sympathetic to what's going on in the world. And I think you just get a wider experience, and it definitely helps.
That's it, isn't it? It's about being healthy as an individual, and being taken out of your own world and perspective. Dylan, I'll come to you. We've had a question come in during that, but I think you are answering it, but I'll read it out in case you have something to add. And it was, did anything surprise you on your trips? And what did you learn from it? And that was actually our final question. So would you like to address that one? Did anything surprise you on your trips? Ella, you were surprised loads by the sound of it. Lots of things that were foreign to you. And what did you learn? Is there one thing? Does it work like that? That you take away one thing? Oh, Dylan's nodding. There is.
Yes, I think sometimes it is just one thing, but the longer you stay in a country, the more experiences you have. And you cherish every moment, and every moment of that, you take away with you. But from my perspective, while I was in India, and this does touch on the question that we have, the importance to undertake such trips as well, is I was helping a community in rural India to build a new church. So we were laying the foundations, and 2 young lads came running towards me, wanted to know everything about Wales, just wanted to know, what the weather was, what do we eat, how life is in Wales. But then they asked me this question: how many churches do you build in Wales every week? And I paused and said, we are not opening new churches, but unfortunately our churches are closing. There are more and more churches closing than that are opening. And I had only one question that was thrown back to me. That question was, why don't you share the love of Jesus Christ with people in Wales? And that really did hit home, because even though I was working with a community, with a buzzing community, especially when we're talking about Christianity and faith, especially in India, Christianity is on the up. But looking back, I could see the decline in my local setting, and it is at that point I did have a calling to go into ministry. And if it wasn't for that particular moment, if it wasn't for that 2 boys running towards me with those questions, I wouldn't be a minister today. So it's, little things like that sticks with you.
Oh, mate, that is not a little thing. You got your calling out of a question on a foreign trip. Wow. That alone would be enough for me to pour money into this, for all our young people to go away, explore their own faith, and explore their own calling out of the context that they're currently in. That's powerful. I love that. I've got one final question for each of you, and it's the one I sent you, so don't panic. It's the for those young people who are watching or listening this and are getting itchy feet and are thinking, do you know, I really would love to do this, but I just don't think it's for me. People from my area don't do this sort of thing, or no one's ever given me this opportunity, or I'm a bit shy. No one even notices me in my own church, let alone going abroad. What would you say to young people? One piece of advice that may be thinking about this?
I think touching a bit there on what you've said, Dylan, that moment or those moments that you have, I think as a young person, as anyone, but I would say more so when I was younger, church was something I'd done. It was something I went to. I didn't really know, I knew what it was. It was very much a part of who I was, but I didn't know how exactly it fit with me. It worked, but it hadn't clicked yet, I guess. And I was, what, must have been 16, 17, when it kind of clicked, and it was when I was away. And just because when you're out of context, sometimes you can feel more comfortable, sometimes you feel less comfortable. But because you're on that adventure, on that kind of, I don't really know what's going on, so I'm a bit on edge, but it's really good. You're in that kind of moment and that state. I think I anyway feel more relaxed, feel more able to be who I want to be in a church context in a way that I hadn't done before. I guess I could just, because these were new people, it didn't matter what I was like. I could be what I wanted to be and say what I wanted to say about God, the way I actually felt, rather than just walking up to my elders at my home church and being like, I think this, I actually really disagree with this. It just wasn't something I was comfortable doing at the time. And then kind of experiencing something else whilst you feel like that opens, I think, because you're open, you kind of take more in, and then you kind of have that moment where you're like, oh, right, this is what faith is to me. Damn, just suddenly realised it just took me to open my eyes to be somewhere new, to kind of embrace it. And then I think for me it clicked. I was like, oh, because I always thought faith was something, I've got to do this, I've got to help with this club, I've got to do this, I've got to do the other. But it's, for me, it then became, it's who I am, not what I do. And I think I knew that, but I didn't understand that was because I'd seen people go through that change and become members at church. But I think when it happens to you, you're like, oh, there we go. The moment's just clicked, the light bulb's gone on, and I put two and two together, that it was the way I am and what I do and what I want to do in life isn't just a spontaneous coincidence. It's because that's God working through me. That's what he wants me to do. And I think being away from that normal context of life, I know for a lot of people I know, that's when it happened. Being somewhere new where you can experience all these things and seeing other people of similar ages, but it's such a different stage of their life or in a different country in their life, and being like, oh, they've just gone through it as well. Just so allowing yourself just to open up and to go and let yourself open up often brings the biggest change in you rather than what you bring back. So I think what I've brought back from most of my trips isn't me sharing things and doing things. It's then who I am, what I do. Like, and actually I think my job and everything that I do now, even though I wouldn't walk around saying, oh, I'm a Christian, it's what I do. It's just part and parcel of what the care that I deliver to my patients. It falls within that because I had these experiences, and then it becomes who you are. I think you've said that yourself, Dylan, and I think that's probably, Ella's hinted at it as well. We've all had that, not necessarily moment, but that change. And often being away from, well, for me, I think it was being away from like comfort of my family and my parents, and having to just, I've been away loads before by myself, but there was something different about experiencing being so involved in another church and having other young people from another country doing it with me. So I think just open your mind, just do it. get over all the fears, because you will have them. Even if you've traveled 6 million times before, they'll be there. So you just have to do it. And then, as we've seen, the benefits that you reap are far better than any of the losses that you had or worries that you had.
Thank you, Ali. Ella?
Yeah, I think if you're thinking of going on a trip abroad, maybe start out with shorter ones first. I definitely suggest that, and especially if you haven't been abroad or away from your home or comfort, definitely shorter trips. I found it very difficult at points, because the first time I'd been away for quite a long time was for about 3 months away from my family, and it was very difficult. And also, there is a moment where you come to realize things, but for me, it wasn't necessarily on my year 7 months out. It took a while, because I think because I'd moved there, I settled in, I learned the way that maybe the Germans did worship. I learned to singing the German song instead of the English words, which was very difficult to do when something like My Lighthouse was playing in German. And I was like, this is the wrong language. And then coming back to my church and playing different hymns, slow hymns, all in the same language, remembering to stay sat down for the prayers. And then when I came back, I had time to process it all and think about it. And I could see, looking back, that's where I changed. That's the moment that hit me. That will stay with me forever. And you might, if you're going on a longer trip, you might not necessarily see it at the time, but as soon as you start looking back over your time in a foreign country, you'll notice small things about how you've changed. And I was talking to one of my friends who'd been to Sweden for quite a long time and came back, and she just came out of quarantine recently. We were talking about it, and we were thinking, everything's changed, but everything stayed the same. Like, when you come back after a long trip, you expect everything to be different. But I'd come back and my room would be exactly the same. My parents wouldn't have touched it. Maybe there would be like clean washing on my bed or something from when I'd left home the last time. But nothing had changed. My brother, my mum, dad, they were all exactly the same people. But it felt inside like things should have changed. And that's completely normal. And slowly, as you get used to living in your home country again, you'll start looking back on your trip more and think, oh yeah, that's when something really moved inside of me. Like, I still do that now, and I've been back in England for well over a year now, and I'll look back over my time and think, oh yeah, that really stood out to me, but I just didn't notice it at the time.
Fabulous. Thank you, Ella. Dylan, you've got the last word.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of the things I would say is, if there is an opportunity, go for it. I think you need to be open-minded. I think we've talked about that, knowing that your horizons will widen. There will be people on your journey who you won't agree with, who is different, even theological views also. But it's about learning to respect others people's views. But I think if people are thinking about going abroad, thinking about doing World Church, thinking about programs, Ella touched about tasters, and there are tasters to be had. When Mission House was in Amsterdam, I know that Council Forward Mission did a 3-day taster for that. Just to experience it, and they are about. But one thing I would say also is just embrace the fact that you are part of God's family wherever you are in the world. And that is what I have experienced. I wasn't a confident person when I was in school, I was a shy person. I didn't talk much, and I was scared going abroad, going for 9-8 months, but knowing that I was part of God's family, and that sense of belonging is important, I think. But grab every opportunity you have. Talk to your ministers, local church. Email your offices. Just any opportunity there is, grab it.
Well, I'm convinced. I'm up for it. Where should we go? So there you have it. Whether you're watching, listening tonight live, or later on in the week or months to come, we hope that these snippets, just literal glimpses into 3 people's experiences, have challenged you, excited you, made you just a little bit jealous enough to want to go out there, get involved, and find what opportunities you can take part in. Take these words to heart, guys. Don't miss out. There are opportunities, and it's not just the same 10 people that do everything. So the opportunities are there for you. They're there for everyone in the URC. So get involved. If you're going to Youth Assembly, big plug here, Youth Assembly next year, the bookings are open. Get booking on.
Open.
And
you want to come.
Ella, feel free to say any more.
The theme is Jubilee. I've been put on the spot here. We have a silent disco.
Yes, you do.
It's going to be great fun. It's, I want to say 28th of
28th,
January.
Yeah. In Whitmore Lakes.
Yeah. It's always a lot of fun. And
you always have an opportunities board.
Yes.
That's the point I'm getting to. Come to Youth Assembly, if nothing else. You will get to talk to people like Dylan and Ella and Ali, and you'll hear their stories and their experiences. It'll inspire you and encourage you and motivate you to go and look at that board and say, right, Lord, where do you want me to go? What opportunities do you want me to take part in? Because if you bring God into the equation and God leads you to choose an option, an opportunity, there will be a reason for it. And you will be changed. You will not be the same. So get involved. See you at Youth Assembly, everybody. So I think we'll finish with a prayer, and then I'll thank you. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you for this time that has just whizzed by. I thank you so much for Ella and for Ali and for Dylan. Thank you for the calling that you've put on their lives. And thank you for the stories that we've heard them share. We pray, Lord, for the people that are listening and watching again and listening again. We pray that you will talk to them very clearly, that you will show them the opportunities that are out there to, as Dylan said, be a part of your wider family, to belong, and to have these opportunities to go and meet their brothers and sisters around the world. So, Father, I do pray for these young people. I pray that you will stir them up and that they will step out in faith and have new experiences. Amen. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much for tonight and your generosity of sharing your stories. And we could have listened longer because I'm sure we've only touched the tip of the iceberg of your experiences. So thank you so much. Don't forget that Trialogue will be back next month, and Tom Hackett, I think, will be your host. And I think they're exploring community. It's very similar to this one, but different. So get involved. But for now, thank you to our panel. Thank you for Stephen behind the scenes. And thank you to you, our church family, wherever you are. So go now. Go in peace to love God and to love others. Bye-bye for now. Bye.